I am not an expert, but I'm going to try and explain tariffs and why this impacts the Canada-US relationship. Let's go. All right, I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding as to what a tariff even means. It's a demand side cost. It's not like the Americans are charging Canadians money for whatever reason. We're not paying anything, but what they're trying to do is make it more expensive for Americans to buy foreign, in this case, Canadian products. So let's use an example. Let's just say this pen is made in Canada, and there's a very similar pen over here made in the United States. Well, let's say we somehow are able to manufacture these pens and export to the United States and sell them there, and it was cheaper. Americans would typically buy the cheaper thing. If it's a commodity, if it's the same thing, really, I'll save money. What a tariff is meant to do is address where this came from and say, oh, if this was made in a different country before it is sold to the consumer in the United States, they're just gonna increase the cost of this by a tariff, making this thing more expensive in comparison to the American-made alternative. And that should have an effect on the consumer. The consumer buys the now lower priced American one. So the demand for Canadian stuff should theoretically fall off because it's more expensive. And then you can apply this to steel, you can apply this to medicine, whatever you want. The whole point is, if it's made in Canada, brought into the United States and sold there, there would be increase in cost to the consumer. So demand should fall off for those Canadian products if it becomes more expensive than the American alternative. The cascading effect of that is, well, if there's fewer people buying the Canadian-made product, well, then the company that's making them doesn't have as big of a business, maybe needs fewer employees, maybe needs fewer warehouse space, things like that. It's a waterfall. It affects many things downstream. So could tariffs impact the Canadian economics? Of course, but that's how it happens. It's a cost to the consumer's choice to decide whether or not they're going to buy the American or Canadian product. Do they produce everything that we produce in Canada? Not really. I mean, a lot of things for sure. They're a great country. They have loads of capabilities. So they could do this. The downstream effect to Canadians is if it affects demand and we're producing less as a result, storing less, then it's going to have job loss, which is going to have less money in the economy for people to go and buy things like clothing or go to restaurants or whatever. So it just keeps cascading. That is my layman's terms explanation of what a tariff is and how it could impact us in this specific case between Canada and the US. Next level, well, the economic fundamentals, what the results are like, could impact things like interest rates, for example, and monetary policy. It could be a really, really big deal, but we don't know until we see how the American consumer reacts to the tariffs if and when they are put in action.